What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive materials. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Marlena Tillhon, is back with us today to talk about triumph over toxic shame. Marlena is an experienced psychotherapist and works as a clinical director in the UK. She specializes in helping people end their struggles with codependency and insecure attachment, as well as learn how to develop self-esteem and create healthy relationships so that they can finally get the love they need. Welcome back to AVAIYA.
Thank you for having me. I love having our chats, our annual chats now.
Yes, our annual chats. I love it as well too. So I love your topic today. I'm so glad that you were open to talking about toxic shame, and it's such an important one, and weaving it into codependency as well. So let's start with toxic shame. What do you think in your experience causes toxic shame?
So at first, when I started on the whole psychotherapy and then inner healing journey, I kind of got hooked on codependency. But as I researched more, started to understand it more deeply, I realized that at the core, it's toxic shame. And the way I look at it is that as children, our brains aren't fully developed, right? They're not developed enough to take perspective, to understand, cause and effect in the way that we need it to understand that if your parent is stressed out or is shouting at you or is sad, it's not your fault. And I do think that as children, our brain personalizes everything. And it's like, well, mummy's stressed and mummy shouts at me, I'm bad. And we do say things like that to children. We say, good boy, good girl, that kind of stuff. It was like, don't make me angry. And straight away, it's almost like we put that responsibility onto small children instead of taking responsibility for our own emotional regulation and our emotional responses. And I do think it stems from then that we don't understand why someone's shouting at us, why someone's telling us off. It doesn't make any sense. So the only place we can go with it is, I must be bad. Mm-hmm. And I do think that's where it stems from. And a lot of the time we shame children for expressing their feelings. We tell them not to moan, to complain, to get angry, to shout, to cry. So we shame their feelings. When their needs overwhelm us or frustrate us or annoy us, we're like, oh, do you have to be so needy, or can you wait? And again, we shame that. And I do think that it's even in normal human interactions, we can have that effect on other people and children when their brains are too young to defend themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense, because at those ages, right, we have no concept of what's going on with mom, what childhood issues are coming up for her right now, right, that she's taking out on me as a kid, or what's going on in her day, or what challenges is she faced with, and why might she be angry, and it has nothing to do with me, and it has to do with finances or her relationship with her husband or whatever, right? All those things that we would never be able to comprehend as a toddler, right? Rightly so.
Yes. Yeah, it's just too complex, too complicated. There are too many variables to consider. So, the kind of egocentric thinking stage, it's like, oh, it must be me.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, you started this conversation, right, being like the core of codependency could be this toxic shame. So does that mean toxic shame comes before codependency? Does it come, or what do you think comes first, codependency or toxic shame?
Yes, I've been thinking exactly in those terms when I thought about our conversation today, and I thought it's like a chicken and egg thing. But I do think that toxic shame comes first, because we start to feel responsible for our parents' experience, stress levels, moods, tempers, whatever. And it's almost like the foundation of codependency to me has always been like an inside and outside in misunderstanding. That we think we only get something from someone else if we behave a certain way, if we please them, if we get it from them. And I do think that as children, when we are taught that you're responsible for making me angry, it's almost like false empowerment comes in, where children feel more powerful than they really are, and then start to think, well, if I want my mommy's love and attention, I have to be a certain way. So it's almost like trying to get something through the other person, like approval, a sense of self-worth through pleasing the other person. So I think we start to get trapped in the codependent conditioning, where it's all like, I can't connect to my sense of self-worth through myself, because as a child, obviously you can't. It has to come through you. And in an adult relationships, right, if we have got the codependent conditioning going on, we want to have that relationship so that someone else can make us happy, or we can feel happy because they're happy with us. We feel loved because they love us. It's not direct, it's indirect through other people. Mm-hmm. So I do think if you didn't have any toxic shame, you wouldn't need to do that, because you would know that you are inherently good and worthy and lovable.
Right.
But because we're disconnected from that, we then use codependency almost like as a coping strategy to reclaim that sense of self-worth.
Right. To the extent where we don't even know what we're doing and aren't even aware of how long we've been utilizing people pleasing in order to feel good about ourselves, or to feel like we're enough. I think I definitely don't remember the first time I started pleasing mom and dad, to feel good, since they were so dysfunctional. Right. So yeah, it's interesting. And I'm curious too, why heal this? Why should we heal this? Should we heal this? What are the negative consequences if we don't address the issues of toxic shame and codependency?
It's a really good question, because I guess a lot of people think, well, I've had this for a few decades now and I'm okay, so why go down the rabbit hole? Which I don't think it is. I think a lot of people misunderstand the healing journey and the process, and they think they have to just go far back into the past and just relive everything, which is not how I work. But it's that if there's codependency in place, you're just not going to have those healthy relationships that you really want, that you can have. So straight away, it blocks that area. But with toxic shame, what I see a lot of is that either people surrender to it. It's almost like they go with it. Like I have no self-worth, so therefore I'm not going to take care of myself. I'm not going to make choices that are good for me. I'm not going to prioritize my well-being. I'm not going to protect my energy. Not going to set boundaries. Not going to go for the promotion. Ask for what I want. Stand up for myself. So many different things. And the other one is where people overcompensate. So it's almost like there's surrender mode, there's overcompensation mode, and that's where you enter the realms of perfectionism, hustling, trying to achieve success, that kind of stuff. So it's the same thing, but one is surrendering to, I would like to say, the illusion of not good enough, right? And the other one is fighting against it. So there's still two threat responses, different expressions, but the core issue is the same. And I think that whenever you're in this kind of threat response mode, you're not connected to yourself, obviously, because you fear yourself, so you don't want to be connected to yourself. So that's where it becomes this reinforcing cycle. But also, I do believe that every human has gifts and a purpose, whatever that is, and we stay removed from that. We stay disconnected from that. And then we're just working against our conditioning or going with it, instead of actually stepping into our power, our talents, our strengths, fulfilling our dreams. I think there's just so much more to us and to life that we can't see as long as we're trapped within toxic shame and codependency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you just said about surrendering to the illusion of toxic shame, because that is really what it is. Because there's no way it could be true if there's no way to ever prove to ourselves that we're like, I always find it so interesting if you really break down the words like worthy or enough or good enough, those kinds of things, right? It's interesting because what do they actually mean? It's all based on our like subjective, right? Interpretation of them. And it's funny because I think so many of us strive to be enough and good enough or do enough or whatever, but where is the top of that scale, right?
Yeah, who sets the standard? Like, who writes the rules? Who gets to say this is enough and this isn't, who this person is worthy? With my clients, I always just use the example that, asking the question, what does a baby have to do to be worthy? I was like, it doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't have to deliver. And that's our natural state. And then we invent conditions. And that's where it gets complicated.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A good reminder for people who are, when we're stuck in that like shame spiral, that's kind of my experience of it. Sometimes we can just go down and down and down, and it's not very productive as far as, living a healthy life. But yes, reminding ourselves of that. If we just remembered what we were, this cute little baby, and how could that little baby not be worthy? It's just impossible. Yeah.
Yes. It's a good reminder when you're not in the shame spiral, right?
Right. Yes.
When
right.
you're in it, it's like slippery slope. So it is help. I think those are the kind of more cognitive steps where it helps you to prevent, going down with it.
Right. You could probably catch yourself before you really go down. So what are the ways that we can heal this toxic shame if we're really looking to get out, right, of this illusion of toxic shame? Like what kind of ways can people heal it?
I think that what's good about it is that there are lots of different ways. So depending on what my clients need, my different needs, you have to customize it. But I think at the base, I like to also be proactive about it and quite empowered. It's almost like you have to make a decision, you have to commit, because it does feel like the whole toxic shame thing is like almost like a cancer of the mind, something that wants to survive, and it feeds you these toxic thoughts. And when your brain latches on, it's like, it's like it just strengthens itself. So a big part for me personally was learning to resist it. I think it's like it started for me with mind mastery, really, where I was like starting to see that I was having these toxic shame thoughts, and some of them were like really strong hooks, some were weaker hooks, and it could then, reel me in and then go down the shame spiral. But that I didn't need anything from the outside to make that happen. So that also meant that I was kind of in control, like it was all happening within me. So I didn't need anything from the outside, and it was learning what thoughts were triggering me, what outside events I made mean something that would then set me off. So it was a lot of that for me to understand my mind, to understand how to manage my thoughts, how to resist, because I do think that is a big part of it. It did feel like sirens and seamen. It was like, well, I'm having these thoughts, and had to learn to really resist going, with them. But then the other part is, and that's where I think it gets really logical. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't make good decisions for myself. I didn't listen to myself. I invalidated myself. Whatever had happened in my childhood, I definitely kept it going. I didn't treat myself any other way than I was treated when I was a child. So therefore, when people say, I don't feel confident, I'm like, well, should you feel confident? Because, sometimes when you do all the wrong things, that would be really bad if you felt confident. So I had to learn how to be with myself, how to treat myself. I could just call it self-reparenting, how to parent myself, to be in a relationship with myself that was healthy and loving and encouraging and reassuring. And that helped me feel more worthy. So it wasn't that you have to feel worthy and then you do those things. I think it's like a relationship. You nurture the other person, or you respect the other person, and they start to trust you. I had to learn to trust myself, but that also meant that I had to stop beating myself up, be self-critical, do the whole self-shaming thing to myself. So it's an internal process and an external process. And I do think you need to see or give yourself the message that you are worthy of your time, you are worthy of your attention, you're worthy of your support, your love, your patience, so many things that maybe you missed out as a child, but it's not too late. You can get it. You can give it to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you just said about, right, inside and outside. I love that, because I think a lot of us are like, okay, it must be an inside job. I've got to do all these things and work on my thoughts and all these things, and coupling it with right behaviors that are like choosing in favor of you being great and amazing, and all those things are definitely helpful, right? Like if someone has a passion for something that they're not pursuing, then maybe a great way to, right, like feel worthy, so to speak, is to choose in favor of whatever that is. Maybe go take a pottery class, or go get into some kind of hobby or something that someone is passionate about, right? Because if we choose against that, then we're not really, right, helping ourselves feel more confident or happy, right, doing things that we love to do. So I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And that's why I think affirmations don't work for a lot of people. Because it's like, if you don't live it, if you don't treat yourself in that way, it makes no logical sense to feel like that about yourself. So it's like you have to, it works both ways. And we're human beings in the real world. And yes, I do experience, my reality from the inside out, but I also have a body to feed and things to take care of on the outside. And like with children, you take them out, you provide them with opportunities and experiences, because why wouldn't you? Like life can be a playground if you allow it to be. So make it good for yourself, and then it's so much easier to feel confident, to feel worthy, to love yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Once again, it's like this reparenting kind of experience. And yes, if you are a parent or a mentor to a child or something like that, right? Yes, you're going to bring that child places and show him or her the world and give them experiences that empower them. So yes, take ourselves places. That's right.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but I get it. I think a lot of us don't do that, especially as we get older. Just kind of stop doing that for ourselves, trying new things, and putting ourselves in scenarios where we can become more confident and empowered. So I love that.
Yeah. And have more fun, because that's the thing that's been missing, right? I mean, like if you think about toxic shame, it's not fun. So we want to go in the opposite extreme a little bit to healthy fun, I guess. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people who have codependency issues don't have that much fun. I think we get wrapped up into not being playful and fun. Yeah. Any suggestions there for people who are really like, man, my life is not really fun anymore, or I'm not fun anymore? Any thoughts there?
Yeah. So I think that, especially like if you're in a codependent relationship, it's very heavy, it's draining, it's again, it wouldn't make sense for you to be all lighthearted and playful and giggly, because the circumstances just don't match that, right? They're not in alignment with that. So again, I think I would have a look at eliminating some unnecessarily stressful things from your life first to create space. There needs to be space for you to feel safe, because you can't relax and have fun if you're feeling threatened, if you're in your threat system, your nervous system's all activated and agitated. So it is to do with learning to take a break, ground yourself, become more comfortable with being in the present moment, because when you're in a codependent relationship, there's always so much drama that takes you further away from yourself. So it is about focusing on the inner connection. Like we've got the external focus, we have to shift it into an internal focus, which is the tricky thing about codependency, but also the one that shifts it the most, in my opinion and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we have to bring it back to the place that most of us don't want to go, but got to go there, right? But
this is the thing. Why do we not want to go there? Because we think we discover that we're this horrible person, but that's the lie of toxic shame that keeps us spinning our wheels. It's like, it's like when you say to a 5-year-old, there is no monster under the bed, look at it, look. And they're like, I can't look at it because the monster will get me. And it's the same thing we're doing with toxic shame. if I connect to myself, if I sit still, if I look at myself, I'm going to find that I'm not worthy, that I'm this horrible person, that I'm badly flawed, that I'm unlovable. But that's the lie, because that's not true. But when we live as if it's true, we're just constantly running away from ourselves and keeping the whole conditioning going. That's why I said it feels like a cancer of the mind, like it wants to survive. And as long as we don't look at ourselves properly, we're just like on a hamster wheel, I guess.
Yeah, no, very, very good point. In the whole cancer of the mind, I think that's such a good way of putting it. And I often think of codependency and toxic shame as really like addictions in many ways. At least that's my experience of them. I can catch myself in moments of, right, almost like wanting a fix of shame. It sounds terrible, but it's like, oh, it's been so long since I felt bad about myself. Why? Right? Like it must be time to feel bad. And I think that can be kind of an addictive cycle. Any thoughts on that?
One of my clients once said that it feels like a comfort blanket to her. And I do think it's because we're used to it. So it feels like home. And sometimes it's nice to just have the familiar. I think our brain, clearly loves the familiar. It feels safe in it. And so sometimes I think we fall back into old patterns because we forget. Sometimes we forget. And then we have to remember and remind ourselves of what's true. But it might also be that in those moments, you need a break because, cultivating new habits, it does require more energy. You have to be more conscious, more self-aware. And I think it's perfectly human to sometimes just need a break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point too, as far as, right, like continuously working on ourselves and all that kind of stuff. Yes. Sometimes we might need a little breather for sure. So what can people expect after they've healed codependency and toxic shame, right? What is different in someone's life after that?
So I guess we've touched on it a little bit, but what I experienced was definitely the lightness. And I felt like, oh, I get to live my life now, which I hadn't before. I always felt like I was in all the problems, like in the darkness and in this heavy feeling where it was like, I have to fix myself before I can do anything. And then it was like, oh, I get to live my life. It was very strange. But I see it in my clients too, that they're like, well, what do I do now? There is this space. And I guess that's where a lot of people get tempted to go back into the known. But you have to just sit with that, with the slightly uncomfortable feeling of newness and space, and then figure out what you want to fill it with. So you get to be playful. And what I say to my clients is, try everything. Like it's like that Shakira song. That was like the theme of one or two of my years when I was doing it. It's like, just try things, because you don't know what you're going to like. Like a child, take them to drawing lessons, dance classes, the gym, swimming, whatever it is. And you do that for yourself. Just let yourself try anything, even if you think it's crazy. Try it. You might like it. It might be your thing. And yeah, it's about feeling light, being more playful, having a go at life, thinking about what kind of life do I want to live. It's more like a lifestyle design when you think, okay, I don't have to battle this stuff anymore. I know how to let go of people and relationships that aren't good for me. I'm learning how to take care of myself. What do I want my life to be about? And that can be really exciting, sometimes scary, sometimes uncomfortable, but also very exciting, and a lot of fun. Like the more you do it, the more fun you have, because you see it's safe, right? Then that safety comes in. And then you don't even think about worthiness anymore, because you feel it, you express it, you live it. And then it becomes like, away from that cycle, it becomes like a positive cycle, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point there about, making sure that you're trying new things, kind of going back to our previous conversation around like hobbies and, things that you don't even know. Maybe you're super talented at something, or you just really love something, whether you're good at it or not. Right. And I like that it's bringing it back to being children again, and how often, right? Like how many activities did we do when we were kids? A lot of kids. Parents had them in, I'm going to try soccer, and I'm going to try pottery, and I'm going to try martial arts and I'm going to try all these things, to, pick and choose and see things that, resonate with us. And that's a good point, because man, we stopped doing that.
Yeah, we stopped playing. And I think there is like a Walt Disney quote, I think, where it says, the creative adult is the child that survived, something like that.
Right.
And I love it because it's so true that, I don't know if you ever have that experience, but I've had this conversation with other people, much older people, and it's all the same. It was the same thing. It's like we might look in the mirror and we look different as we age. I don't feel any different on the inside. Like I could be any age.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, well, we must age in our mind when we follow rules, externally reinforced rules and shoulds, and we kind of drain ourselves of our vitality and life force and energy. It's like, let's reclaim it. Let's just reclaim it. Life is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I've had over 3 decades where it was difficult. The last decade I've made a lot better, and I'm, planning on improving that. It's like, how good can it get?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I love what you said about, right, like not feeling as old as we are. I just had this conversation with my partner, Ike, whose birthday it was this week. And he turned 53, and he was reflecting on how funny it is. Like, I think a lot of times when we're younger, we think, oh, when I'm 53, I'm going to feel like, I don't know, wise or some, like some kind of distinguished whatever, because of all of our life experience. And we were just joking about how he's like, I still feel like a 16-year-old kid, right? I still feel like, this playful, young man and all these things. And yet, I think a lot of us think we're supposed to be different or feel different. And it's like, we might have wrinkles or we might have, things changing in our appearance, but yeah, we can maintain that, right? Childhood mind, that childhood self. I love that.
I think we can give that to ourselves, because that's the thing I feel we were deprived of, that we had to grow up so much faster, and we didn't really grow up. It was just like pushed down and suffocated and stifled and inhibited. That's how it feels to me. That's why healing feels more like reclaiming yourself, becoming more of yourself, letting yourself be that energy and have that energy and that youthful energy, and just feel the lightness of it. So even though we didn't get to do it then, it's like, give it to yourself now, make it happen now. I think that's how you triumph over toxic shame, right?
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's great. I love how uplifting this conversation is in so many ways, as we talk about something very heavy. Just what we can do with it and how we can be playful and youthful and reclaim our childhood, so to speak.
And I think that's the point, that it is a really, really deep topic. Like, I don't really think that there is anything deeper than toxic shame, not that I have found anyway. And if you can talk about that topic in this way, if you can shift it from something so difficult and painful and dark, where you question your life, where you feel like, I can't go on like this, and then you end up where I am now. And I know that there is way more, but it's such a transformation. It's such a huge shift. I'm just a normal person. Yes, I've studied this, but I use real life practices, right? It has to work in the real life. It has to translate. It can't just be in your head. I know it's possible for everyone. Everyone who is willing to face it, who wants to reclaim their life and their youthfulness and that energy, and do something with their lives, whatever they want to do. That's how you kind of make it worth it. That's how you're like, I'm not giving up on myself. Other people might have, I'm not. I'm going to take this opportunity. And that's why you don't have to, what I said in the beginning, have therapy for decades and then just feel normal. It doesn't have to take long. It's having some realizations, some insights into yourself, into understanding how humans work, how humans thrive, what we need to feel good, and then implementing it again and again and again. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about committing to yourself and that process.
I love it. Well, thank you. I so appreciate this conversation, and I so appreciate how positive and empowering it at least definitely has made me feel, and I'm sure others as well, in really, getting into the joy of what it would be like to reclaim our lives and let go of all that. So I appreciate that. Let's talk about how people can learn more about you and your work. I know you have a free guide for everyone, as well as a really great new program you're coming out with, and there's a couple links below to those.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've got a free guide with 5 empowering practices, so like self-worth boosts that anyone can practice daily, and it will impact how they feel about themselves, the choices they make. But I'm super excited about the new program, which is called Worthy, Lovable and Deserving, and it's all about learning how to feel worthy, about conquering shame, taking it into relationships so that they feel lovable. So we touch upon, feeling insecure in relationships and attachment. And then deserving is where it's almost like we expand, deserving of having a good life, of having fun, of having people be patient with you, of trying things out and failing, which I just think is learning, of having fun, of having success, of making money, of writing a book, of figuring out what your gifts are, like whatever it is. So it's all packaged into one program. We're going to have lots of live interactions. There's going to be teaching, obviously, and insights, lots of insights, because I do think that's what transforms and makes everything like a million times easier.
I love it. Well, thank you. I'm sure everyone would love to work with you, and how uplifting you are and helping people really, embrace that childlike mind again, and, live their life. So again, everyone, the links to everything we just talked about are below, so you can go check those out. Do you have any last insights before we wrap up?
I think that every time we talk, something new emerges, which I love. And I do think that this time for me, it's seeing that it's almost like there's a spectrum, and toxic shame is like at the beginning. And sometimes it can feel to me like it's a challenge we have to overcome, to then have our lives open up, before us, and then really being brave enough to ask ourselves, well, what kind of life do I want to live? What do I want to create? And I think that's the empowering part, whereas toxic shame is so disempowering. It makes you feel like nothing is possible. It's all hopeless. You constantly have to prove yourself. When that falls away, you have so much energy that you can then use for the things you actually want to do with your life. And that's what I find fun now. I was in the whole toxic shame, not personally, but in the work for a long time to understand it. And there are some people that kind of stay stuck in it. Like you said, it can have this addictive quality. Or in our work as well, we have to, I guess, watch out that we don't feel we constantly have to improve ourselves, because that feeds into that limiting belief, that illusion that you have to become better. The way I look at it is like, when you want more from life, when you want to give yourself things, it's not coming from a place of lack, but from a place of worth and abundance, where you're like, this is already amazing. I'm already feeling good about myself. How far can I take that?
I love that. Yes. Starting from a place of how awesome we are, and creating more awesomeness. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's always great to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Andy. I love talking to you every time.
Awesome. And thank you everyone watching or listening right now for showing up for yourself and being willing to take this journey with us today. And we will see you again very soon. Take care. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this last class with Marlena Tillhon. She was back with us today talking about triumph over toxic shame. We talked a lot about toxic shame, right? Being this core that creates codependency as a coping mechanism. If we didn't have this shame, this not feeling good enough, this, not being worthy of love, etc., then why would we ever create codependent tendencies? Why would we ever people please? Why would we ever try to control? Why would we ever enmesh with our partners, all those kinds of things, if we didn't have that core wound, that toxic shame. So I think it was really important that we talked about this surrendering to the illusion of toxic shame. Because again, it is an illusion. There is no winning in the game of trying to be good enough. It's impossible, right? We can't ever win that game because unless you have a very specific level at which you are ending that game, and here, if I reach this rung of the ladder, then I've won and I'm finally good enough. It's an endless battle that is just not healthy for us. So it really is this illusion of toxic shame, right? Going back to what Marlena said about, well, is a baby worthy of love? Is a baby enough? All those kinds of things. And if you really get present to, looking a baby in the eyes, it's like, of course. So if you kind of re-presence your childhood self in this conversation and get back in touch with that little baby, just like you would be in touch with maybe your own children or grandchildren or other kids in your life that mean a lot to you, or a pet if you don't have any kids in your life, then I think that's a great way of then reflecting that back to yourself and remembering how great you are and worthy you are and how enough you are, so to speak. So I thought this was a really important reminder. And I love that we also dove a lot into play and the childlike mind, and remembering that we can explore possibilities in life of all the things that we want to do. We can keep doing that no matter what age we are. So I hope that you found this helpful, everyone, on your journey, and we will see you again soon. Take care.
AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.